The UN High Commissioner for Refugees has delivered another impassioned plea for the war to end, holding grave concerns over the humanitarian fallout as Ukrainians continue to cross the border in record numbers. Filippo Grandi made the statement as he visited a key transit point for those fleeing the conflict on the Poland-Ukrainian border. Our reporter Omar Dehen is in Przemysl in Poland, near the border with Ukraine. He joins us now. Good evening, Omar. Now, you spoke with the UNHCR High Commissioner. What else did he have to say?
Janice, when asked to reflect on the escalating nature of the war and this refugee crisis, Filippo Grandi said global fears that things would worsen on both fronts are sadly being realised as he urged Ukraine's bombardment to end, saying the human cost is unbearable, and now the total of refugees that have crossed from Ukraine has surpassed 1.5 million. That number seems to be growing by about 100,000 or so a day. In Poland alone, it's edging towards 100,000, and operations are expanding across Poland's busiest transit points, including this train station and across its 8 border crossings to maintain its handling of the situation. But the UNHCR has growing concerns about such humanitarian efforts, particularly in other border countries, crumbling under the weight of demand. With Ukraine's fathers forced to stay and fight for the future of their children and country, it's been up to the mothers to guide their young to safety. At Medica's border crossing in Poland, Ukrainian families ripped apart by war, ready for the next stage of their journey. Women rummage through the possessions they have left and hold on tight to what they treasure most. Bus after bus arrives to take them into town. Some will stay in Poland while they wait and see what happens back home. Others are travelling further into Europe, but very few, if any, want to be here.
It's kind of scary. I'm really nervous, and when I'm going to Poland, I'm like every day crying because I don't want to go to Poland. I want to stay in my country. I don't want to leave my home. It's my home. Why I should leave? Because of Russians? Because some crazy granddad Putin wants to take my country and my people? It's real scared.
Tetiana and her brother are headed to Germany to stay with their uncle, but Mother Nelia is merely an escort. She'll soon go back to Dnipro in central Ukraine to be with her husband, who's ill.
I'm going to home from my husband, and I won't say we won't live in Ukraine. We don't want to live in Germany, in Poland. We are Ukraine. Please, Europe, America, Australia, please help our Ukrainian people.
There is plenty of help for Ukraine's people. It just doesn't involve military support. With arrivals in Poland unrelenting, activity in Medica is accelerating. Aid tents that weren't here a day earlier springing up overnight. Volunteers from around the world continuing to play a crucial role in humanitarian efforts. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees praising the response after touring the border town, but offering grim predictions about the situation.
It's just growing exponentially. The news from Ukraine are not good. I think that in terms of numbers, it's going to get worse. I cannot think otherwise, unless we, the war stops.
It would be fair to say that there was a bit of a surprising element to how quickly things escalated. What are some reflections on how the situation is as it is now?
Well, what can I say? I think the whole world is stunned by this crisis. This crisis has enormous geopolitical implications, as we all understand, and I think that the world is anguished by what this represents. The human cost is unbearable, and this has to end so that people can resume their lives.
While Mr. Grandi described Poland's response to this rapidly growing crisis as organised and well prepared to continue taking in the record numbers it has been, he expressed serious concern about the capacity of smaller surrounding border countries like Moldova to the south, which is already struggling to cope with these first wave of arrivals, let alone if there's a second or a third wave if this conflict in Ukraine drags on as feared.
Many have asked me whether we should build refugee camps. I really hope not. Refugee camps are not a good solution. Look at Greece, so many problems we've had there. So I think that it's better to continue to distribute these people.
But the UNHCR holds serious concerns over what might happen if countries going above and beyond now are leaned on too heavily for too long. On the Poland-Ukrainian border, Omar Dehen, SBS World News.
Our coverage